In today's video, we are diving into an epic clash from the 2025 Sinquefield Cup. Alireza Firouzja versus Praggnanandhaa. The game started with the Sicilian Rossolimo, and inside this opening, we'll uncover a fascinating variation you can add up to your own repertoire. By the end of this video, you'll learn how to play the Sicilian defense against the Rossolimo attack, how to keep your options open by playing the most flexible moves, why central pawns can be your biggest asset and your greatest weakness, and finally, how to convert a passed pawn into a winning game. This game is full of practical lessons that you can directly apply in your own games. So let's jump in. Firouzja is white and Pragg is black. Firouzja opened the game with 1e4, c5 the Sicilian defense, knight f3, knight c6, and now we have the move bishop to b5, also known as the Rossolimo attack. And Pragg played the move g6, sort of a dragon variation where black develops the bishop to g7. We have castle by Firouzja, bishop g7, and now we have the move c3 by Firouzja. So Firouzja's idea is to simply strike in the center with d4. So Pragg played the move e5, not allowing white to play the move d4. And here Firouzja decides to capture the knight on c6 with bishop cross c6. But instead of bishop cross c6, white could have simply played the move d4. And this is the particular variation I was talking about. After d4, for example, we have a couple of trades on d4. It looks like black is a pawn up. Indeed, black is a pawn up. But on the other hand, the g7 bishop is simply blocked by his own pawn on d4. Black is having double pawns on the d file. And especially the most critical part here is the d6 square is a very weak square. So white can simply play the move bishop f4. After knight e7, as black can't play knight f6 because the d4 pawn is hanging. So after knight e7, white can simply develop the knight to d2. After castle up, white can play a very strong move in this position, which is bishop to d6, simply pinning up the knight to the rook. For example, after a6 attacking the bishop goes back, b5, rook c1, you can already realize how easily white has developed all his pieces. For example, after bishop b7, f4, white's idea is basically to put his knight from d2 to f3, maybe get e5 in, and eventually capture the d4 pawn. For example, if black plays rook c8, white can simply trade off the rooks and play the move knight f3. For example, rook e8, just moving the rook from the spin, simply queen b3, putting some pressure on the f7 pawn. And now if black plays knight c6, just knight g5. And now white is already completely winning, as the f7 pawn is simply collapsing. If you try queen f6, e5 simply wins, and the game is over for black. So that's, I believe, exactly what white should have done. But instead, Firouzja decides to capture the knight on c6. We have d6, not allowing once again white to play the move d4. We have d3 now, queen e7. So now, what's the idea of queen e7? Basically, black wants to develop the knight on f6, but he can't as the e5 pawn is hanging. So first queen e7 in order to defend the e5 pawn. Knight goes to d2, knight f6, a4 by Firouzja, just trying to grab some serious space on the queen side, and also at the same time, white's idea is to put the knight on c4. We have the move short castle, knight goes to c4, attacking the pawn on e5. We have the move knight to e8 by Praggnanandhaa. So Pragg has realized the knight on f6 is simply a bad piece, not really doing anything. So he put the knight on e8, now the e5 pawn is well defended by the bishop and the queen. We have the move bishop to e3. With bishop e3, I believe Firouzja has kind of developed all his pieces. We have the move knight to c7 by Pragg. It looks like why Pragg is simply moving the same piece twice. So basically the knight on f6 was not a great piece, but putting the knight on c7, there could be some scope. Maybe the knight goes to e6 with the idea of going the knight to f4, putting some pressure on the pawn on d3. And I personally believe it's much easier to play with the black pieces. Definitely white has developed all his pieces, but to achieve d4, it's already very hard. You can't play d4 as I can simply take the pawn on d4 as the e4 pawn is simply hanging. So after knight c7, Firouzja first played the move h3 in order to cover the g4 square. And here, Pragg played the move rook to d8. Now many beginners in these types of position go for playing a move like f6 in order to defend the pawn on e5, or just bishop to d7. But you see, playing the moves like bishop d7 or f6, they are not a flexible move. By playing the move rook d8, you see, we are just moving the rook to d8. Why? Because it's simply a natural square for the rook. Putting the rook on an open file, semi-open file, and simply attacking the pawn on d3. We are keeping maximum options available for the bishop on c8. maybe the bishop can go to d7, maybe the bishop can go to e6, or who knows, we might play the move b6 and put the bishop on a6, attacking the pawn on d3. You see, if there's not a fixed square that is the best square for the piece, we are not really moving the same piece twice. After rook d8, we have the move queen to c2 by Firouzja, and now we have the move b6 by Pragg. Pragg's playing style is simply amazing. He's not really wasting any time. He's playing the most flexible moves in the position available. We have the move b4 by Firouzja. Now, while I was analyzing the game, I thought maybe a5 makes sense, trying to simply push the pawn on the a file, but it's not going to work as there is simply b5 attacking the knight goes back, and now simply knight e6. A good square for the knight, as I said. The knight can jump to f4, putting some pressure on the pawn on d3. Even bishop a6 is coming up with the idea of b4, attacking the pawn on d3. Going back, a5 is not a great move, so in the game, Firouzja decides to play the move b4. A very strong move. After b4, we have cb, and now we have the move knight to a6. Now at the place of knight a6, it looks like can black simply go for capturing the pawn on b4. The moment the queen moves from the e7 square, now white is ready to capture the pawn on e5. What happens? Now basically, black has given up his e5 pawn for the b4 pawn, and white is simply better. Why? Black is having a weakness on the c6 pawn, white is having nice complete center control, and that's the reason white is simply winning. For example, if the queen goes back, attacking the knight, white can simply push the pawn to d4, and now the c6 pawn is simply hanging. For example, if black pushes up the pawn, white can simply take the pawn, and once black recaptures the pawn, at the very least, I can simply capture the pawn on c5. But even a stronger move is to simply capture the pawn on f7 with the knight. After king cross f7, we have simply rook to d1 attacking the queen. The queen have to move, it's a check, the king move, and simply queen cross c5. Definitely white is a pawn down as white has sacrificed a piece, but black's king is very weak and white has gotten all his pieces into the game and white is simply winning. So that's exactly why queen cross b4 would have been a bad move. Instead, we have the move knight to a6 by Pragg. You see, he has not really moved the bishop yet, so he's still having the square of a6 available for his knight. Now knight to a6 simply attacks the pawn. We have the move bishop to d2 by Firouzja, but now this is not a great idea, because after knight cross b4, bishop cross b4, queen cross b4, after knight cross e5, it looks like the same position, but there's a bit difference. White no longer having the bishop for the knight, and this is why black is simply better. After knight cross e5, now black goes back with queen to d6, the knight is simply hanging, so Firouzja played the move d4. And now instead of d4, if knight cross e6, there's simply queen cross d3, queen takes, rook takes, and the position is, I would say, black is already better because black is having the bishop pair advantage. So going back, instead white played the move d4. Now after d4, we have the move c5 by Pragg. So basically, if you try to capture the pawn on c5, I can simply take it with the queen, and once again I'm having the bishop pair advantage. The position is opened up, that's the reason black is already better. Going back, we have the move rook f to d1. Basically, white can go for capturing the pawn, but it's not really a threat, so we have simply bishop b7, simply trying to develop all the pieces. If white takes the pawn on c5, simply queen cross c5, and there is nothing happening, black is simply better. So we have the move a5 by Firouzja, trying to push his a pawn, trying to make some space for the rook. We have the move rook a to c8, trying to get all the pieces into the game, and now the threat is to simply capture the pawn on d4, attacking the queen on c2. The queen moves to b3, now simply attacking the pawn on f7. The queen moves to c7, simply defending the pawn on f7. We have the move ab, and now rook to a7. Why? Because black is preparing to capture the pawn on e4, so white stopped it with rook a7. It looks like maybe white is better, practically speaking up. Why? Many of the beginners would say so. Because the rook is active on 7th rank, the queen looks good, the knight looks good, putting pressure on the pawn on f7, it looks like white looks fine. Indeed, white looks fine, but there is simply bishop cross e5. That's why there is calculation in chess. After bishop cross e5, there are two ways for white to capture the bishop, with the knight or with the pawn. In the game, we had the move d cross e5. If white captures with the knight, black is simply a pawn up after rook cross d4. Rook d4, cd4, black is having the open c file, a pass pawn, black is a pawn up, and Pragg is good to win this game. So instead we have d cross e5, but now it's even bad because now we have the move rook cross d1, which is not the best move. Instead, Pragg was simply having a free move in this position, which is c4. Simply getting a free move in c4 attacks the queen. For example, white is having two ways. White can either go for capturing the rook, or white can simply move the queen. If white goes for capturing the rook, we can simply take it back and simply push up b pawn, and 2 pawns are good enough to win the game for black. If white moves the queen first, we can trade off the rook, attack the queen first, the queen have to move, and b5. Once the same thing, black is completely winning. But instead, Pragg first took on d1, queen d1, and he played the move c4. He should have first at least played rook d8, the queen move, and now c4, b5 looks winning. But he played the move c4. And now Firouzja was only having one possible try, which would have been queen to d6. Basically, if queen takes, pawn takes, the bishop takes. Now after rook e7, it attacks the bishop. The bishop has to come on c6, so that after d7, rook d8, if there is a check, black can take it, and basically the c6 bishop defends the e8 square. But here, there is simply knight e5, attacks the bishop and the pawn, the bishop moves, and simply knight cross e4. You take it, you lose the game with rook e8. So after king f8, basically the game ends in a draw. Though the best move is c3, if knight to d4, queen d6, if c2 is already a bad move, it's a blunder, it equalizes the game. After queen takes, rook takes, knight takes, you have to take the knight and you lose the bishop, and it's already a draw. Going back, black can play takes, bishop cross, rook e7, bishop c6, d7, takes, and we have this position which ends in a draw. This would have been the only move for white to finally save the game. But instead, Firouzja played the move queen a4, as both the players were playing on seconds. We have c3. Now, in this position, queen c6 would have been even better, just moving the queen from this particular pin and simply keep pushing the pawn. Instead, we have the move c3, which is also fine. We have knight d4, and now we have rook d8. Once again, pushing the pawn would be a big blunder. White can take everything, and the b7 bishop hangs. So going back, we have the move rook d8, first attacking the knight. Basically, the idea is to simply capture the knight. Once the queen takes it, we can push the pawn and make a queen. We have e6, black simply took it, and basically you can't really take the pawn because simply c2. Black doesn't really care. Even if white takes the queen, black can make a check and capture the knight, and black is a piece up. So Firouzja decides to capture the bishop, takes, knight takes, and after queen d7, in this position, Firouzja decides to resign the game. Why? Basically, after queen d7, for example, if queen c4, maybe scaring the black king a bit, there is simply queen d3, attacking once again, trying to trade off the queen. The queen move, queen d2, the queen move, and now b5, a very nice move, attacking the queen. You take, you lose the game. I can simply push the pawn. You have to, if you play queen c7, I can give a check and trade off the queen. And if at the place of queen c7, if you play the move queen b3, I can simply give a check, and once again I can trade off the queen and win the game. That's why after queen d7 in this position, Firouzja decides to resign the game. And with this, now Praggnanandhaa and Fabiano Caruana is leading the tournament of the Sinquefield Cup 2025. It was a very nice game played by Praggnanandhaa to beat Alireza Firouzja. All the moves he played were flexible, keeping maximum options available for him. He did not really move his bishop at the opening. Instead, he moved the rook, moved the knight at a bit square. And that's exactly how you should play chess, keeping maximum options available for you. And with the help of the calculation, with the help of the understanding of the position, he was able to outplay Alireza Firouzja. Though at the very start, I believe Alireza was having the opportunity to play the move d4. Instead, he went for giving up the bishop for the knight, which I personally did not like, because the d3 big pawn becomes a bit passive, and that's exactly when Praggnanandhaa was able to strike Alireza Firouzja and he won the game. So I hope that this analysis of the game was very insightful. If it was, make sure to like, share and smash that subscribe button. I'm going to come up with these more exciting videos like this. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching OneShot Chess.